The Sterling Enterprises building stood imposingly against the gray autumn sky, its mirrored windows reflecting the heavy clouds that hung over the city. Inside the building, the constant buzz of clicking keyboards and muffled conversations filled the air, masking an underlying tension that few dared mention. Jessica, a 28-year-old software developer, sat at her desk, fingers hovering hesitantly over the keyboard. His face, normally lively and full of life, was pale and tense. She looked around the office, her eyes briefly meeting those of Sarah from marketing and Emily from HR. A silent understanding passed between them, a shared understanding of a painful secret they could no longer bear. With a shaky sigh, Jessica began typing. The words flowed from his fingers, describing in disturbing detail the inappropriate advances of Mr. Thompson, the company manager. She wrote about the innuendos, the veiled promises of promotions in exchange for favors, the constant fear that now permeated her workplace. As Jessica typed, unwanted memories flooded her mind. She remembered the first time Thompson called her into his office, praising her work excessively, his hand accidentally landing on her knee. She remembered how her stomach turned when he suggested she could go far in the company if she was cooperative. Sarah from marketing silently approached Jessica's desk, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Are you really doing this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the office noise. Jessica nodded, her eyes never leaving the computer screen. "We have to do something," she replied quietly. "We can't keep living like this." Sarah bit her lip, hesitant. What if they don't believe us? What if we lose our jobs?" Jessica stopped typing, finally looking at Sarah. "What if we don't do anything? How many other women will have to go through what we went through?" Just then, Emily from HR joined them, her normally calm face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Once we send that email, there's no going back." Jessica looked at her colleagues, seeing in them the same fear and courage she felt. "It's the right thing to do," she said firmly. "We cannot let fear silence us." With a determined nod, Emily and Sarah returned to their tables. Jessica finished typing the email, rereading it several times to make sure every detail was correct. His finger hovered over the send button, a bead of sweat running down his forehead. Upstairs, Richard Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, was immersed in a pile of reports when he heard the familiar ping of a new email. He looked at the screen, frowning when he saw the subject line "Urgent Report Sexual Harassment." Richard opened the email, his eyes widening as he read its contents. Shock, anger, and shame washed over him in successive waves. How could this be happening in your company? How had he not noticed? He reread the email several times, each word etching itself into his mind. The charges against Thompson were serious and detailed. It wasn't just one employee, but several, all telling similar stories of harassment and abuse of power. Richard leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. He has always been proud to lead an ethical company, a place where people feel safe and valued. Now that illusion had been shattered. He knew he needed to act, and quickly. But how can we investigate this without causing more harm? How to protect victims and ensure that justice was done? It was then that an idea began to form in his mind. He picked up the phone, dialing a familiar number. "Chloe," he said when his daughter answered. "I need your help." Meanwhile, downstairs, Jessica, Sarah, and Emily waited anxiously, their hearts pounding in their chests. The email had been sent. Now all they could do was wait and hope that their voices would finally be heard. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Every time the elevator door opened, the three women flinched, fearing they would see Thompson or some company executive coming to confront them. But nothing happened. The day ended like any other, with employees rushing out, eager to escape the stifling office environment. Jessica was the last to leave. As she walked to the elevator, she couldn't help but glance at Thompson's office. The light was still on, and she could see his silhouette through the blinds. For a moment, her heart stopped, fearing that he might come out and confront her. But the door remained closed, and Jessica entered the elevator with a sigh of relief. As the doors closed, she couldn't help but wonder what would tomorrow bring. In the comfort of his home, Richard Sterling sat with his daughter Chloe, explaining the situation and his plan. Chloe listened intently, her face a mix of shock and determination. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" Chloe asked, her voice full of concern. "It's dangerous." Richard nodded gravely. "It's the only way we can be sure. We need hard evidence before we can act." Chloe took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "Okay," she said. "I will do it. These women deserve justice." As father and daughter finalized the details of their plan, the wheels of destiny began to turn. A storm was brewing at Sterling Enterprises, about to forever change the course of many lives. Night fell over the city, shrouding it in a blanket of darkness. But for Jessica, Sarah, Emily, and so many others, a small light of hope had been lit. Their voices, silenced for so long, could finally be heard. And so, with heavy but determined hearts, everyone prepared themselves for what the new day would bring. The battle for justice and dignity was just beginning, and no one knew for sure how it would end. But one thing was certain: the silence had been broken, and there was no going back. Chloe Sterling watched her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the person looking back at her. Her long blonde hair, normally down in soft waves, was now tied into a severe bun. Thick-rimmed glasses framed her eyes, once precisely lined, now free of makeup. A well-behaved gray suit replaced his fashionable clothes. "Are you ready for this?" Richard's voice sounded behind her, filled with fatherly concern. Chloe turned around, staring at her father with determination. "I am. These women need help, Dad. I can't stand by knowing what's going on." Richard nodded, pride and apprehension mixed in his gaze. "Remember, you're Claire Adams now, newly graduated, seeking your first opportunity in the corporate world." Chloe, now Claire, took a deep breath, adjusting the folder in her hands. "Understood. I'll find out the truth about Thompson and help end this nightmare." The lobby of Sterling Enterprises was buzzing with activity when Claire entered. Employees hurried past her, absorbed in their own concerns. No one paid attention to the apparently nervous young woman who approached the reception. "Good morning," Claire said, her voice shaking slightly, part acting, part actual nervousness. "I'm Claire Adams. I have an appointment with Mr. Thompson." The receptionist smiled politely, indicating the elevators. "Fifth floor, Miss Adams. Good luck." Claire thanked him, her heart racing as she entered the elevator. The doors closed and she found herself alone with her thoughts. The stories he had read in the email, the experiences of Jessica, Sarah, Emily, and so many others echoed in his mind. Determination grew in his chest. She would do it for them. The elevator stopped on the 5th floor with a soft ding. Claire walked out, her eyes immediately taking in her surroundings. Tables arranged in orderly rows, the muffled sound of conversations and keyboards clicking. And there, at the back of the office, a door with a golden plaque, "Mr. Thompson, General Manager." Claire approached the assistant's desk, announcing her presence. The woman, a young woman not much older than Claire, looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and... was that a warning in her eyes? "Miss Adams," the assistant asked, receiving a nod from Claire. "Mr. Thompson will see you now. Please come in." With one last calming breath, Claire knocked on the door and entered Thompson's office. The man behind the desk was exactly like the descriptions in the email. Tall, well-dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. He stood up, extending his hand to Claire. "Miss Adams, welcome," Thompson said, his voice smooth as velvet. "Please sit down." Claire shook his hand briefly, sitting in the indicated chair. She could feel Thompson's eyes roaming her body, and she fought the urge to flinch. The interview started normally. Thompson asked questions about his background, his aspirations, his skills. Claire responded with the carefully crafted story she and her father had created. It was when the conversation took a different turn that Claire felt her stomach drop. "You know, Miss Adams," Thompson said, leaning forward, "a talented young woman like you could go far in this company, but it takes ... dedication. Do you know what I mean?" Claire swallowed hard, her heart hammering. I'm not sure, Mr. Thompson. Could you explain further?" Thompson's smile widened, predatory. "Well, sometimes you have to make some sacrifices to advance your career. Perhaps we could discuss this better in a more private setting? How about dinner tonight? Claire felt bile rising in her throat. It was exactly as the women had described. The insinuations, the veiled promises, the implicit threat. I don't know if Claire stuttered, playing the role of the innocent and scared young woman. Thompson stood up, moving around the table to stand next to Claire. His hand landed on her shoulder, heavy and threatening. Come on, Miss Adams, don't you want to impress your new boss? It was at that moment that Claire knew she had all the proof she needed. With a quick movement, she stood up, moving away from Thompson. Actually, Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice now firm and clear, I think I already have all the information I need. Confusion flashed across Thompson's face, quickly replaced by anger. What are you talking about? The office door suddenly opened, revealing Richard Sterling, accompanied by 2 police officers. She's talking about exposing you for the predator you are, Thompson, Richard said, his voice thick with controlled fury. Thompson's face paled, his eyes darting from Richard to Claire to the police officers. Sterling? What's going on here? Claire removed her glasses, undoing her bun. My name is Chloe Sterling, Mr. Thompson, daughter of Richard Sterling, and you were just caught red-handed trying to harass an employee. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Thompson was detained, protesting his innocence as he was led away by officers. The office erupted in confused and shocked murmurs as the news spread. Richard turned to his daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. You were amazing, honey. So brave. Chloe returned the hug, feeling relief flow through her. Thanks, Dad. But the work isn't over yet. They emerged from Thompson's office to find a crowd of employees gathered, faces filled with confusion and fear. Richard cleared his throat, catching everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice firm, I know you all have many questions. I promise they will all be answered. But first, I would like to say something to the brave women who took the first step in exposing this terrible situation. His eyes swept the crowd, landing on Jessica, Sarah, and Emily, who stood together, silent tears streaming down their faces. Thank you, Richard continued, his voice cracking with emotion. Thank you for having the courage to speak out. I promise you all things will change from now on. This company will be a safe and respectful place for everyone. A stunned silence fell over the office, followed slowly by tentative applause that soon turned into a thunderous ovation. Chloe watched the scene, her heart full of hope and determination. This was just the beginning. There was a lot of work to be done, a lot of healing to happen. But today they had taken the first step towards a better future. As the noise died down and people began to disperse, Chloe saw Jessica, Sarah, and Emily shyly approaching. Miss Sterling, Jessica said softly. WE just wanted to say thank you. For believing in us, for doing something about it. Chloe smiled, taking Jessica's hands in hers. No, I'm the one who thanks you. You are the real heroes here. You were the ones who had the courage to speak up first. The 4 women hugged each other, tears of relief and gratitude flowing freely. It was a moment of connection, of mutual understanding, of the promise of a better future. Richard watched the scene with a mix of pride and determination. He knew the days ahead would be challenging. There would be investigations, possible lawsuits, a complete overhaul of the company's culture. But looking at his daughter, at the brave women who had risked everything to do the right thing, he knew it would be worth it. Sterling Enterprises was about to undergo a transformation, and Richard was determined to make sure it was for the better. News of Thompson's arrest spread through Sterling Enterprises like wildfire. The hallways, once filled with anxious whispers and fearful glances, were now overflowing with excited chatter and sighs of relief. At the center of it all, Richard Sterling found himself faced with a monumental challenge, rebuilding not only his company's reputation, but also the trust of his employees. Dad, Chloe said, walking into Richard's office with a stack of papers in her arms. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Richard nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. I know, honey. Where do we start? Chloe spread the papers out on the table. First, we need a public statement. Something that shows we are taking this seriously and that real change is coming. While father and daughter discussed strategy downstairs, Jessica, Sarah, and Emily gathered in a quiet corner of the office. "Do you think things will really change?" Sarah asked, her voice still filled with doubt. Jessica took Sarah's hand, squeezing it gently. "We have to believe. Look what we can do together." Emily nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. Maybe ... maybe we can help make those changes happen." The three women exchanged determined looks. They had faced the worst together now. They were ready to build something better. The next day, Richard called a general meeting. The company auditorium was packed, a buzz of anticipation hanging in the air. Richard took the stage, Chloe by his side. He looked at the crowd, seeing anxious, hopeful, and even skeptical faces. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice firm. "The last few days have been difficult for all of us. What happened at our company is unacceptable and shameful. But today we are not here to look at the past. We are here to build a better future." A murmur ran through the audience. Richard continued. "Starting today, we are implementing a series of changes. First, we are creating an anonymous reporting channel managed by an external company. Second, all employees, including management, will undergo mandatory training on harassment and respect in the workplace work." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "But more importantly, we are changing our culture. We will no longer tolerate harassment or discrimination of any kind. And to lead this change, I would like to introduce our new general manager, Ms. Olivia Harper." A middle-aged woman with dark hair and a determined look walked onto the stage. Olivia Harper was known in the corporate world for her integrity and compassionate leadership. "Good morning, everyone," Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here not just as your new manager, but as someone committed to creating a safe and respectful work environment for everyone. It won't be an easy journey, but I know that together we can make Sterling Enterprises an example of integrity and respect in the corporate world." Olivia's words were met with enthusiastic applause. For the first time in a long time, there was a feeling of hope in the air. In the days that followed, Sterling Enterprises entered a frenzy of activity. New policies were implemented, trainings were scheduled, and an atmosphere of change permeated every floor of the building. Chloe, now officially part of the leadership team, worked tirelessly alongside Olivia to ensure promises turned into concrete actions. One afternoon, as Chloe was reviewing some documents in her new office, she heard a soft knock on the door. "Come in," she called, looking up from her papers. Jessica, Sarah, and Emily entered timidly. Chloe smiled, inviting them to sit down. "How can I help you?" Chloe asked gently. Jessica took a deep breath before speaking. We had an idea. We wanted to know what you think." Emily continued, "We were thinking about creating an employee wellness committee. A group that could listen to people's concerns, propose improvements, make sure everyone feels safe and valued." Chloe felt her heart swell with pride. These women who had been through so much were now on the front lines, fighting for a better environment for everyone. "I think it's a wonderful idea," Chloe said, smiling widely. "We'll introduce you to Mrs. Harper right away." The excitement was palpable as the four women headed to Olivia's office. The manager listened carefully to the proposal, an approving smile forming on her face. "This is exactly the kind of initiative we need," Olivia said when they were done. "You have my full support. Let's make this a reality." In the weeks that followed, the Employee Welfare Committee took shape. Led by Jessica, Sarah, and Emily, the group quickly became a key pillar in Sterling Enterprises' new culture. Regular meetings were held where employees at all levels could express their concerns and ideas. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the company began to change. Fear gave way to trust, silence to open communication. One day, while walking through the office, Chloe noticed something different. There was laughter echoing through the halls, genuine smiles on people's faces. The tension that once permeated the air had been replaced by a feeling of lightness and shared purpose. She stood near Jessica's desk, watching the developer work on a new project, her posture relaxed and confident. "How are things around here?" Chloe asked softly. Jessica looked up, a bright smile lighting up her face. Amazing, she replied. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can truly be myself here. That my work is valued for what it is, not for other things. Chloe felt tears forming in her eyes. I'm so happy to hear that, Jessica. You all deserve to feel this way. That night, Chloe joined her father for a late dinner in his office. They ate in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through the window. You know, Dad, Chloe said finally, breaking the silence. When this all started, I was so scared. Scared that we wouldn't be able to change things, that we would disappoint all those women who trusted us. Richard smiled gently at his daughter. And now? Chloe looked out the window, a soft smile on her lips. Now, I feel hope. I see how much we've already changed in such a short time. And I know this is just the beginning. Richard took Chloe's hand, squeezing it gently. I'm so proud of you, honey. What you've done, what you've all done, you haven't just saved this company, you're changing lives. Father and daughter stood there watching the city below, their hearts filled with gratitude and determination. They knew the road ahead would still be long and challenging, but they also knew that together they could face any obstacle. Sterling Enterprises was transforming, not just a better company, but a beacon of hope and change in the corporate world. And it all started with the courage of a few women who refused to remain silent. Olivia Harper straightened her blouse, taking a deep breath before entering the meeting room. Today was an important day, the first all-hands meeting since she took over as manager at Sterling Enterprises. The room was already full, eager and hopeful faces turned toward her. Good morning, everyone, Olivia began, her voice calm but firm. Thank you for being here today. I know the last few weeks have been challenging but also exciting. We are building something new and important together. She paused, her eyes scanning the room, meeting the gazes of Jessica, Sarah, and Emily. The three women smiled encouragingly. I want to start by thanking the Employee Wellness Committee, Olivia continued. The work you are doing is incredible. Thanks to you, we have already seen significant improvements in our work culture. A murmur of approval passed through the room. Jessica, Sarah, and Emily exchanged proud looks. But our work is far from over, Olivia continued. Today I want to introduce some new initiatives that I believe will help us continue to grow and improve. She then detailed a series of programs, employee mentoring, professional development workshops, and a new performance review system that prioritized teamwork and integrity. As Olivia spoke, the atmosphere in the room changed. What started as anxiety and expectation turned into enthusiasm and determination. People started asking questions, offering suggestions. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a flood of ideas and positive energy. Chloe, sitting in the back of the room, watched everything with a smile. She could feel the change in the air, almost tangible. Sterling Enterprises was no longer a place of fear and secrets. It was becoming a community, a place where people felt valued and heard. After the meeting, Chloe approached Olivia. That was amazing, she said, smiling. You really have a gift for that. Olivia smiled back, a light blush on her cheeks. Thank you, Chloe, but the credit isn't just mine. It's all of us, especially you and your dad. You had the courage to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. The two women walked together down the hallway, watching the employees return to their jobs. The buzz of lively conversation filled the air. You know, Chloe said thoughtfully, when this all started, I was so focused on exposing Thompson and protecting the victims. I didn't realize we were starting something much bigger. Olivia nodded. Sometimes that's how big changes happen. They start with one brave person taking one small step, and then suddenly you realize you've inspired others to do the same. They stopped near Jessica's table, who was laughing at something Sarah had said. Emily stood nearby, a relaxed smile on her face as she worked on her computer. Look at them, Chloe said softly. A few weeks ago, they could barely smile. Now they are leaders, Olivia added. They are shaping the future of this company as much as we are. At that moment, Richard Sterling joined them. He watched the scene for a moment, a proud smile on his face. You know, he said, his voice low, when I founded this company, I dreamed of creating something that would last, something that would make a difference. But I don't think I ever imagined it would turn out like this. Chloe hugged her father. "You made a difference, Dad, by making the right decision when it mattered." Richard returned the hug, tears glistening in his eyes. "We made a difference, honey, all of us." Weeks turned into months, and Sterling Enterprises continued to flourish under new leadership. The Employee Well-Being Committee has become a model for other companies, with Jessica, Sarah, and Emily frequently invited to speak at conferences on corporate culture and harassment prevention. Chloe, now working full-time at the company, led an initiative to create an internship program aimed at young people from underserved communities. "We want to give opportunities to people who normally wouldn't have access to the corporate world," she explained in an interview. "Diversity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good for business." Olivia continued to lead with compassion and integrity, earning the respect and admiration of everyone in the company. Under his guidance, Sterling Enterprises not only regained its reputation, but became known as one of the best companies to work for in the country. On a sunny Friday afternoon, almost a year after the events that changed everything, Richard invited Chloe, Olivia, Jessica, Sarah, and Emily to his office for lunch. As they ate and talked, Richard looked around the table, his heart filled with pride and gratitude. "I want to thank all of you," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "for what you did for this company, for the employees, for me. You didn't just save Sterling Enterprises, you turned it into something better than I could have ever imagined." Chloe took her father's hand, squeezing it gently. "We just followed your example, Dad. You taught us the importance of integrity, of doing the right thing even when it's difficult." Jessica, who had become a confident and respected leader, raised her glass. "Here's to," she said, "to the courage to speak out, the strength to come together, and the determination to make a difference." Everyone raised their glasses, the sound of the toast echoing through the room. At that moment, looking at the smiling faces around her, Chloe felt a wave of emotion wash over her. They had faced the worst and emerged stronger. They had turned a tragedy into triumph, fear into hope. Later that day, as the sun began to set, Chloe stood in the doorway of her father's office. Richard was standing by the window, watching the city below. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" she asked softly. Richard turned around, a serene smile on his face. "I'm thinking about legacies," he replied. "About how the choices we make can affect so many lives. I'm thinking about how proud I am of you, of all of us, for choosing to make a difference." Chloe joined her father at the window, watching the city lights begin to glow against the darkening sky. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when this all started, I was so scared. Scared of failing, of disappointing the people who trusted us. But now, looking back, I realized that the fear didn't matter. What did matter? It was having the courage to act despite being afraid." Richard put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, pulling her close. "This is how we change the world, darling, one courageous act at a time." Together, father and daughter stood there, watching the city below, their hearts filled with gratitude and hope. Sterling Enterprises had weathered a storm and emerged stronger, more compassionate, more whole. And in the process, it had become a beacon of change in the corporate world. As the stars began to dot the night sky, Chloe thought about all the lives that had been touched, all the stories that had been rewritten. And she knew, with a certainty that came from the depths of her soul, that this was just the beginning. The best was yet to come.